So okay, I work on history, and basically I look quite closely at labor history, but I'm a historian, so mostly what I look at is in the past, and also in the decades around independence. So what I'm going to say comes from that space. And thanks for having me here, because I mean, it's very important to listen to what's happening right now on the ground. And so I'm learning a lot here. Um, so, I mean, I absolutely agree with what so many people have said here, that these struggles, whether it is on contract labor or on minimum wages, are not isolated struggles, and that, they're absolutely connected to all other rights which are given in the Constitution, and therefore we need to broaden the struggle. So I absolutely agree with that. And but I would like to link that more specifically to the issue of minimum wages, because I mean, I've been looking at old minimum wages debates when they emerged in the early 20th century, and then in India around the mid 20th century. And I think even there, there have been different trajectories. So do we look at minimum wages as something universal, or do we look at, as something very sector specific? So I think if you look at the context of New Zealand, which is where I think the minimum wage, if I'm right, the minimum wages concept first emerged, or at least was implemented. There it was part of a larger struggle of collective bargaining, where minimum wages were sought to be established through boards across industries. So it was not something that was relegated just to so-called sweated industries. Whereas in Britain, when it emerged, it was more, minimum wages is something that you need to fix for those people who don't have collective bargaining power. In which case, then already you are creating a kind of segregation between, what today we call the formal sector and the informal sector. And so I think even in India, so I won't go on about this a lot, I just want to put it out there to think about it when we are making these demands. So if we come to India, I think in the 1940s, 50s also, when we look at some of these debates, again, this idea is minimum wages, something like some kind of token thing that you're giving to people who can't bargain for themselves, who are in sweated industries, so as some kind of daan that you're giving, or is it something that is universal, and is a question that comes up. And in the Indian case also, at least so far as I have seen, initially this demand for setting minimum wages did emerge, for example, amongst railways, amongst textile workers, and there were efforts that, okay, you set a minimum, and then of course there will be different mills that will give more than that, or you would bargain for more than that, but we need to set a floor minimum. And these demands came out of collective bargaining, not as something that was, given as some pittance. But on the other hand, there was this whole, also global, through the ILO and all of this demand that, the understanding that minimum wages needs to be there for those who can't bargain. And so then what is a minimum becomes a question, right? And so a bare minimum just to keep your body and soul together. And so then there is a distinction that emerges between what's a minimum wage and what's a living wage. And if you read the fair wages report, then the fair wages report, after a lot of debate, says, oh, fair wage is somewhere between minimum wage and between living wage. And then this whole idea of, and so many people were talking, Pratibha ji was talking about how when it comes to certain sectors like garment sector, then, oh, these women only need it as a supplementary wage, they are not the main wage workers. And so when you go sector wise, then you immediately see that, certain workers are deemed to need only very little, and therefore your minimum wage there can be lower, whereas other sector workers require a certain other criteria. So I think we need to be careful on how we frame this. Is it universal, or is it something, just for the informal sector? is, I mean, I obviously think, and most people have spoken about how it's important to broaden the struggle and make it more universal. And I think we need to be conscious of the history and really push in that direction. The other point I wanted to make was, I don't know, I myself work on the history of law, but coming from the women's movement kind of understanding, the state and the law have always been a kind of double-edged sword. On the one hand, even the women's movement has always made demands of the state and expected the state to kind of, ensure and protect. On the other hand, we know that the state is not something benign, and the state turns its weapons against those who struggle. So, in that sense, what role has law played in the field of worker and workers' rights? I think is something important to take stock on, because today, I mean, the informal sector is more than 90% of the economy, but in many ways, law also played a very important role in creating that division, especially because things were not universal. So I think we need to take cognizance of that when we are kind of thinking about new forms of new kinds of laws, and within that, then how do we ensure accountability? Because again, that's something I heard a lot here. The kind of lack of accountability within the state, and we know that the current dispensation is kind of hollowing out all the state institutions, so that there is no accountability anywhere. So, and many of the very good kind of laws and legislations that have come into place also are, I mean, often ineffective because of this lack of accountability. And I think that's again a larger, universal, more broader problem which we really need to take into board when proposing or when demanding new changes. So I think that's would be another thing that we need to look at. I think I'll stop here. Thank you very much for having me.